Hi, this is Jeff Foreman from the INTJ equation. This is Astro Type. We are joined by Zeon, the Mystical ENTJ. Hello. And this is
Hey there.
and this is Oflamo. He was a guest on my old podcast. I will remember to link it down in the bottom if you guys want to hear that on my other channel. It's now Trauma Type. We are going to look at his birth chart, and I was under the impression that he was an INTJ when we did our interview, but he may very well be an ENTJ. We're going to look at his chart and see if we can suss that out. And he definitely looks more like your chart, Xeon, which we're going to do eventually too as well.
Well, I could. Are there any aspects you want to look at first, Jeff?
Okay, I was reading about this. I don't have a whole lot of understanding on it. It's I guess like the crossing point between your moon, your sun, your
Oh no, that thing with the X in the circle,
yeah.
the part of fortune.
Yeah, what is that? Because it's not on mine.
Part of fortune's like a weird optional point. I believe it's Arabic. I think it came from the Middle East. I think it's one of those older things. It's like an indicator of where you will sort of like gain resources or find opportunities, but not always good ones. Asterisk, you know.
Okay.
Neutral ones, you mean?
Yeah, it's like you might get opportunities and like resources and stuff out of it, but it might also not always be good for you. So it just depends. So, we see it at the cusp of the 10th house of the Taurus. That would probably mean that, working hard on his career is going to bring him wealth and resources. Wow, shocker. It doesn't for everybody, of course. So for him, maybe that is a special thing.
The secret is I just don't spend all of it.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right. I guess we could start out the sun and moon since in the ascendant. I mean, he has Leo rising. That sounds actually pretty extroverted, pretty, I don't know,
It is.
strong-headed.
It should be anyway. Yeah, it should be. Leo rising, usually his behavior is going to seem not exactly, I mean, it could be kind of goofy on the outside, but like his behavior is going to seem really expressive. It's going to seem like he's really engaged with like, putting on an act all the time and like he likes having fun with people.
Okay. Do you resonate with that all, Oflamo?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. This you can go on to the next one.
He sure sounded like it when we were talking before this started recording. Um, you want to go on to the nodes, Jeff? Or you would see something else?
Yeah, we go on the nodes. He has a lot of
Yeah.
big stelliums down there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One gigantic stellium just like all the way through three signs, just like mine. Same three
Yeah.
signs too.
Same.
Um,
Stellium's that triangle. What?
which triangle?
What's a stellium? Point. Annotate. Annotate that.
You want the stellium? All right, here we go. Here it is. See this? No,
That's
this
the
whole
main
thing. This
one.
this whole thing. Yeah, there's a smaller one just sitting right here by itself, but there's like a big one too.
It's where you have three or more personal planets in a house or a sign.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
But you have like a
Yeah,
group of them right there.
and I don't even make a distinction with personal planets exactly, but I mean, I guess it depends on how you want to interpret it, because obviously, these so-called impersonal planets had to do with generations of people, but I mean, there's still something in your chart. So the fact that there's a big string of planets, especially in Capricorn, but also just all the way through here, is kind of like very heavily concentrated, obviously, in certain houses and also with certain sign themes. So if you look at, let me just get rid of these circles. If you look at this thing that says IC, that's the fourth house as opposed to the 10th house, which is up here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then of course the ascendant, the descendant. These matter because they're pointing to directions. They have a sort of symbolic meaning in terms of the side of the chart that they're on. So like everything that's clustered towards the bottom means that everything's kind of inwardly focused, you could say.
Introverted, you said.
Not necessarily introverted, but maybe. So because then when you look at the signs they're in, we've got Scorpio and Sagittarius, we've got Capricorn. Capricorn and Scorpio might be on the more introverted side because earth and water signs tend to be more receptive. but that does not mean that they are inactive. Okay. And since you have a fair amount of Sagittarius down here, it's like, is it really introverted? Because Sagittarius is pretty outgoing, and so is your Leo ascendant over here. So when you got a stellium, it's usually going to be clustered in one of these quadrants of the chart. So you can kind of see how these circles, that I made have these spaces between them. Those are kind of the quadrants of the chart. You can also make quadrants out of, you can actually make quadrants out of the chart in a lot of different ways, but this is one of the typical ways. So usually you'll see the bottom and the left and right and top all being like a quadrant. So these three, and it's not always very like neatly organized depending on how your thing was oriented when you were born. But if the stellium is near the bottom, then it's more inwardly directed towards your own emotions, towards self-awareness, towards your own thoughts. And because that's where you're going to find the 4th house, the 3rd house, the 5th house. Those are the Gemini, Cancer, and Leo houses, respectively. They're always near the bottom, Speaking in terms of like the actual physics of it, whenever you were born, wherever you were born, these things were literally underneath the earth where you were. So, and then the top of the chart was the actual like top of the sky if you were to look directly up from where you were born at that time. So they may be more inwardly focused and emotional. They may also just be sort of more personalized in a sense. But then you've got a stellium that's over here towards the descendant. And so if it's more towards that right side, it's going to be a little bit more interpersonal, shall we say? Because the right side is the interpersonal side. That's where Libra and Scorpio and Sagittarius are, see, and Virgo. And those signs tend to be more sort of, I guess you could say, interactive,
Yeah. I need to make a quick comment on astrology for the disbelievers on here. This is like a giant clock. This is we're using the stars as a clock. So we can keep track of the cycles. So what's in effect is Earth, but we use the stars as a background as a clock. And this is a abstract mapping, a geometrical mapping on the stars, so we can understand what time it is.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like to call it like a sort of cosmic clock for the flowing metaphorical meanings of how the universe is put together rather than just telling time.
Mm-hmm.
You get all these different themes out of it. And since the stellium is kind of mostly, it looks like it's mostly in the 5th house and it's in Capricorn, the stellium here, there's one that's in Aquarius, it's going to have a really heavy-handed concentration on sort of being a realist, because Capricorn is the hardcore realist sign, figuring out how things actually work, trying to understand systems, trying to be professional, trying to have a realistic outlook. And being more in the 5th house signals that that's going to be applied to our own personal expressiveness. But it also might have to do with leadership style. It might have to do with artistic and creative pursuits. I think that you mentioned that your profile picture on Discord was from like some kind of crazy, gigantic
strategy game.
And I might even say grand strategy game.
Yes, Battle for Westnok. So I edited a Battle for Westnok sprite for my Discord avatar.
And what do you like about that game?
Well, I like that it was free and open source and had nice colors. But I don't like that it's good, but it would have been better if it would use like something similar to Civilization, so all the turns happen at the same time. It would have just been a more scalable game strategy wise. But it is what it is, and I didn't take the time to make it the way I wanted. So that's how you play it. One turn at a time, so that both turns at the same time.
What do you enjoy about grand strategy?
It's not all just. It's the quick twitch doesn't give you all the win, so that's what I like about strategy games. But then again, I got more into RTSs, so those are still strategy games, but they're not quick twitches. Usually don't save you there either. It's just we get to move on. You can't just stall out just by waiting. So, which is the problem with lots of turn-based games.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, well, so let's see. So yeah, Stellium down there, Capricorn. Yeah, so basically it's like you want something that's kind of like a more serious, large scale systems management kind of experience, and you want it to also be something that feels self-expressive, which I assume like a fantasy game would feel to you, like, oh, this is colorful, it's interesting, it's kind of fun, but it's also like this like strategy game.
Yeah,
You know,
and the fifth house sounds like Enneagram Type 5 for some reason. So
the fifth house, yeah. So the fifth house is, and it's an important house for you, so we might as well talk about it. The fifth house is the Leo-esque house. So it's like the Leo in the sun to some extent. Your sun actually happens to be in it. Uh, so the fifth house is like anything that you view as an extension of yourself. The fifth house is activities that have to do with it's what's it called? Intrapersonal intelligence, not interpersonal, but intrapersonal. So self-awareness, awareness of who you are, and then extending who you are out into the world. So that has to do with authority and leadership. That has to do with creativity and putting on performances and acts and things like that. Um, it can also have to do with romance, children, anything that you view as an extension of yourself. It's just an area of operation, though. It's just a place with a bunch of stuff in it. It's not necessarily an animating force like the planets would be, you know. It's just a place. The houses are just places with themes, whereas the signs are sort of like psychological drives and motivators for the planets that they're in. So, or that have them in them, I should say. So things landing in the fifth house means that you're going to express things in a sort of Leonine activity set, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's how you're going to approach them, if that makes any sense.
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So the Capricorn approach is the main one that you're using there. And obviously it's going to be a lot more sort of, what do I want to say? Just very like, it's not, it's not that Capricorn is necessarily inherently mean or depersonalizing, but it kind of can be. Like it's very serious, it's very goal oriented, it's very disciplined, it's very focused on self-improvement. I don't know if that resonates with you.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it does with me too, because I have a lot there myself. But
Love
basically
Signal does sound pretty TE.
yeah, it does. And so does that Taurus 10th house he has up there with that part of fortune. We can probably get back to that later. But and Capricorn is also kind of, in some ways, kind of self-sacrificing, because it's so focused on trying to achieve its goals that it'll do almost anything to get to them. In your case, that's a good thing, though, because we have this right here, the North Node. And wherever the North Node is, it's pointing towards what you need to develop in yourself to overcome the corresponding South Node and its destructive tendencies, shall we say. So it's actually a good thing for you to aim for that kind of self-discipline and self-improvement, because you need it. Because basically, like your South Node, what it's saying is that you, and it's in the 11th house, it's in Cancer in the 11th house, all right? So the basic meaning would be something like being overly emotionally dependent on the group around you to give you an idea of what you should be doing or thinking. The 11th house is like the house of collaboration. It's the house of like working in groups. It's the house of intellectual genius and knowledge, but it's like being really distantly connected and networked all the time, you know? Um, and so if it's in Cancer, then basically it's a very emotional, it's almost like you're overly emotionalized and you're overly dependent on what other people say and tell you. You might be kind of like overly emotionally attached to the idea of egalitarianism and freedom, interpersonal freedom, to the point that everyone is just permitted to kind of just do whatever the hell they want all the time, including you, and there's no direction, and it just gets very amorphous and chaotic and kind of unstructured. So like your North Node, Capricorn 5th house North Node is basically saying you need to get your act together and then figure out who you really are and how to lead from that and how to express yourself by, getting a firmer grip on reality and also
Yeah.
respecting the rules of reality rather than just emotions.
Oh, yes. So that's correct. I am indeed a hedonist. But yeah, I do have to pay to the. If I don't follow the laws of the universe, I can't get what I want because that's how you get what you want. You have to follow the laws.
Yep.
So
Yep. See, you've already got the thread here. You have to follow, and you say laws, right?
yeah.
You could also just say rules, because Capricorn is basically a sign of the rules of life, the rules of reality. How do things work? How does the universe fit together? How can I actually use it to get a result? So those would be your nodes there. Now, the other part that's really important for the nodes is figuring out where the
I want
rulers
to
are.
stop there real quick and maybe talk about the functions and type of typology just a bit.
Yeah.
That does sound like TI opposing personality, whatever you want to call it, kind of like you're insecure about your own thoughts. You kind of use your TE to kind of say, well, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And repressing emotion definitely does kind of sound FI inferior as well.
Yeah. What do you think, Flamo? You agree?
I don't repress emotions, but I do hold back the display of them. I do hold back the display of them because I know people usually use that as the exploit me and get me to do stuff I don't really feel like doing.
Like holding your emotions back.
So I just don't. I feel them. I just don't show them.
Yeah, people internalized. Does that ever like make you kind of snappy with people where you kind of like control them at all? Because it doesn't sound like that was a very controlling aspect in your chart, but ENTJ is usually kind of controlling and want to take charge and bully people around because they're insecure about their feelings, if I understand right.
Well, thanks, Jeff.
So I don't. So sometimes when I'm too tired, I'll go into that kind of mode. When I was a child, I used to have freaking those autistic meltdowns. So that may just be just an automatic response.
Mm-hmm.
And this may be a more suppressed, more controlled version. But generally, when I make sure I train and I'm relaxed, I usually can just let people do what they want or just get them out of the way.
And another thing you said something about like you're hedonistic. I knew this ENTJ that I work with and went to school with, and her drug and alcohol problem, I think it pretty much contributed to losing her life in a car accident, probably. But
oh my gosh,
yeah, and she was actually one of the few women in the world ever attracted to me. It seemed like, but it was an interesting dynamic because she was like really cruel to me, but she also seemed to really like me at the same time. I don't know. I don't want to make this about me, but do you ever get like that? Like, is that where the hedonism comes at? Like, and you said you need like that self-discipline to learn to control yourself. Sounds kind of like a SE child, SI trickster, kind of in a way, or even demon. We're kind of distinguishing between INTJ and ENTJ here.
So it's a little bit different. So hedonism is kind of like a philosophical aspiration for me, rather than the stoic nonsense where you just flog yourself for society. So it is more aspirational. I don't hold myself to it that strictly. It's more aspirational. So I can say, well, I could do this with that person, but think of yourself. Think of yourself for once.
Yeah, that's what your nodes are looking like, actually. So, you say that you're actually kind of aspiring towards hedonism. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so the thing is, like the fifth house, like I just showed here with this node, even though it's in Capricorn and maybe a little bit more disciplined and rule oriented, the fifth house is actually very hedonistic because it's all about kind of like what you want to express and then go do. It's like, what am I and how can I kind of remake the world in my image, and how can I enjoy it? How can I have recreation? How can I shine? How can I get more attention? How can I be centrally important? How can I do all the things I really want to do and tell everyone else they have to do it with me, kind of a thing. So if your North Node is there, then you have a problem expressing yourself that way and a problem trying to understand how to do that with yourself, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And unfortunately, if you go to a mind expert, they don't teach you how to do any of that. They just give you the latitude and collect your money.
Yep.
And I remember you talking about on your Discord server, and we can edit this out if you don't want to talk about it publicly.
No, we definitely talk about going on the show.
Okay, your sex cult aspirations. That maybe tie into that.
Absolutely.
And what the hell? My thing's going everywhere. And this moon over here in the 8th house, that kind of seems, it's kind of a stellium of its own, or a focalizer of its own, because I was reading in Stephen Forrest's book that if you have something in a chart that's in its own little section, that could be a focalizer as well.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I even have if you go to my blog on my the Become a Living God forum of famous Doom Bunker, I think I have a, some people say it's a Topa or a thought form that's I'm pretty sure it's theirs when I scan it, but it made itself shaped like Rieka Katami. So it's like, so that's by driving my sex code aspirations, and that's the form of my destructive tendencies, how I envision it when I reflect on myself. So yeah, but yeah, like I like that Bible Black game. I'm just surprised no Abrahamists look at it and try to say there's no reference to it. The Abrahamists don't attack it at all, because I guess it's just really old visual novels, not that popular, so no one attacks it, or everyone's afraid of it and no one attacks it. I don't know. We'll find out eventually, but I don't know yet.
Okay, well, all right. And how do okay, so I mean, we were just talking about the MBTI angle. I think like talking about the hedonism thing, that's definitely, I mean, that's sounding, I don't think that's a very INTJ thing, is it, Jeff?
It can be ENTJ because of
No,
the
INTJ.
INTJ. It can be because of the SI demon, SE fear, whatever perspective you want to look at. Like I know, like for me, when I get stressed or whatever or bored, I eat. Eating's my big thing, but I know some INTJs kind of get involved in sex or drugs, and
Yeah, I'm not. I tried a bunch of drugs. I don't like most of the drugs, but sex, absolutely. Food, I really like the food. In fact, I need to tell you that, like John Kellogg, the 70 Adventist, made his food super bland because he thought it would make people have more sex. It's good, good, well-spiced food will make people have more sex. So he got rid of it and sold cereal to you. So.
Yeah. And how PG do we want to keep this, Jeff?
I don't really care.
Okay, all right, awesome. So, Oflameo, like what kinds of, I mean, since we're on the subject of sex, we might as well, like what kinds of like sexual preferences or aspirations do you think are really important for you?
So I'm bisexual, so I could take the supply from anywhere really, but I do have a preference for women right now.
Okay. And what kind of women do you like the most?
Well, here's the problem with kinds of women. We don't. It's what criteria are we selecting from? What kinds of US are we talking about? We're talking about, because that's too vague.
Is it too vague? You don't have
Yes,
specific kinds you like?
I think that's too vague. Kinds of my context.
You were telling me that you were hooking up with this INFP chick for a while. How does that still ongoing or?
Well, she was in a hospital recently. I'm gonna check on her today, but I think she should have been out a couple of days ago.
A hospital or hostel?
Hospital.
Like a psych hospital or a medical hospital?
I think medical hospital. She had like problems with her brain, needed some work or something.
Okay.
I think it was from residual from a car accident that they had a follow up on.
Oh wow! All right.
Yeah, so well, we already talked about this nodes a little bit, but the rulers make it more interesting. So you can see that the moon is the ruler of this Cancer South node, you know? What does it mean? Well, obviously you always have opposite planets as the rulers for your nodes because your nodes are always in opposite signs, with emotions and a feeling of safety and comfort and possibly even also addiction and self-medication driving the South node. You know, since the South node usually has a negative interpretation, we come to an interesting crossroads if he's talking about having a sex cult, because the moon being in Aries in the 8th house would indicate that he's trying to kind of fulfill his South node's tribal purpose in the 11th house, tribal purpose, by creating something dark and sex-oriented and sinister, that is driven by his own instincts and proclivities in Aries. What do you think, Flame?
Oh, that's describes it pretty distinctly, yeah, because guess my variant Eris is supposed to be, I think, one of Aries progeny anyways, so that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. No, usually the ruler of the South Node has the same negative connotation that the South Node does. Now, they're not always inherently negative. This is important to understand the South Node. It's not just a bad thing, but it is a thing in your life that you do way too much, and it probably is becoming self-destructive, you know. It can be helpful, it can be useful, the South Node and its ruler, but you have to be careful with them because they can very easily end up consuming you because you just do them all so automatically that you don't think about it. And it just basically overrules and overrides everything else in your life. So, wanting to form a sex cult might not be the healthiest thing to do, especially if it's not being done in a very enlightened fashion, shall we say. Um, but the impulses behind doing it are maybe not necessarily inherently bad. Okay,
Yeah,
so
so it's good. I got that covered because I took pretty much no action at all in that endeavor because of no advertising, no marketing, um, barely any research done. Yeah, I mean, even the stuff you read about the alleged sex cult that don't exist in love, it's just nonsense anyway. So,
mhm.
so,
I'm
so,
glad that you
so
didn't do research on sex cults. That's good. Uh,
there's barely any good information if you even look it up. It's just sensational nonsense.
oh yeah, of course.
But
No,
plus you have to take it in account that all cults at some levels are sex cults anyways, because of
oh
living in
yeah,
a society. So,
oh yeah.
and the last thing is that cults don't want me anyways because I think too hard.
Yeah, you sound less like a psychopath who just wants to have a cult for its own sake, and more like somebody who has parallel impulses, shall we say, that don't necessarily result in the same outcome or conclusions here. The North Node's ruler is Saturn, which obviously, much like Capricorn itself, is the planet of discipline and rules. But also of attaining goals. So, like, it's not just that you're going to sit there and self-flagellate and drive yourself into the ground and push yourself really hard and grind yourself to a nub. It's also that you have certain goals that you want to accomplish that matter to you, you know, or maybe even to the society at large around you. But since your North Node's in the fifth house, it's probably more like it matters to you.
Yeah, it's not my society. I mean, I'm in the United States. Not my society doesn't give a crap.
Yeah, we all have the same society. Um, so okay, so Saturn. Let me get rid of this arrow here if I can.
Let me just chime in a quick thing here too. We don't know his exact birth time. I guess Pennsylvania doesn't do birth times on birth charts, so it's kind of a ballpark. So we're not
Yeah,
100% sure about the houses and the rising and all that, but it should be pretty close because mom has an idea.
yeah. So what what his ruler for the North Node is indicating more is that in terms of wanting to learn the rules and in terms of aiming for a sort of more enlightened hedonism, shall we say, you are trying to then use that to accomplish um, an Aquarian sixth house goal or goals. Basically, you want to have a job, you want to do work that somehow improves the world or improves humanity and pushes it forward into the future, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
Okay, and how does that manifest for you?
So a lot of times I end up doing the work someone else was supposed to be doing just so I can do my job better. I'll pick up someone else's work and just do it for them, just so I can start doing my job, so I can have an easy time doing my job.
Right. Yeah, so you're aiming to be a hard worker, obviously, and you don't mind picking up the slack in order to get things done.
I work hard so I can work easy later.
That's right. Yeah, efficiency, right?
Yes.
Yes. Saturn is the planet of efficiency, and as long as you're aiming for efficiency, you are probably aiming at a healthy aspect of your life. Um, Now, what about pushing the human condition forward into the future, or even being forward thinking and inventive and being like an early adopter of new trends and technology? Did you see any of that?
Oh yeah. So I got into BTC in 2013. But then I didn't have a lot because I worked a shit job at the time. But I got enough of it.
Uh-huh. All right. And do you have, I mean, do you feel like you are reaching for any goals in your life that are supposed to sort of remake the world at large, implement new ideas, transform the social condition, anything like that?
I looked into it. It's I can't get a good grip on even the place we're starting at, so I have a foggy idea of where we're gonna go. I know I'm gonna do locally,
Right.
but yeah,
So, and you'll see that, like you'll see that with the North Node and the ruling planet. There's a vague idea that you're trying to do it, but you don't really know exactly how or what it's going to look like, and you're kind of grasping at straws trying to figure it out, right?
yeah,
Yep. Whereas with the South Node and the Moon over here on the top, like you're just like, oh yeah, let's just make a sex call. But I wouldn't really do that because that's stupid, right? But like you're like, oh yeah, I know all about that, and that's a South Node and South Node ruler kind of a thing. You already have a very strong sense of it, even if you don't necessarily want to act on its worst tendencies, but you still have a very strong sense of what it means and how to do it. But you also probably have an idea that acting on your South Node and this Aries moon too blindly would be self-destructive. Is that right?
yeah. Here's the thing: there's the way it's sized up. There's no action I could do that will realistically get me there because pretty much I read a pimp's game, and pretty much all women choose. Men have literally no control. It's just all women's choice anyway. So
Uh-huh.
I guess I could probably do a gay sex hope out. I don't care about that. You can just grind it works properly, so it's not even necessary. But but um but pretty much women have a lot of power right now. Maybe you could trick them here and there, but it's not. It just and it's dysgenic and stuff. So it's just there's really nothing men can do to. You can ignore Andrew Tate. There's really nothing to do. Women pick who they want. It's not. There's no pattern. There's no. So it's nothing. Just don't bother.
Mm-hmm. Although I'd also say that men have to pick them in turn.
Yes, you can. You drop whoever. Just yeah. Pick in 10. You just can't pick anything out of the gutter.
All right, Jeff. So what do you want to throw in with MBTI on all this stuff here?
Well, I just wanted to kind of go into your chart a little bit. I don't have it in front of me. It's buried somewhere in our Discord chat somewhere. But not only you're an ENTJ and he's possibly an ENTJ, both NTJs. You're also both on the spectrum.
Yeah. Yep.
So is that anywhere in his chart? If you don't want me to talk about that,
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. Something interesting that I was trying to figure out was whether or not people who are on the spectrum tend to have no air signs. He has only one planet in an air sign. I have none. So that might be something. And air signs, why air signs? Because air signs are the most frontal lobe oriented. They're the most oriented towards communication. So, or at least what we would think of as normal human communication. Let's put it that way.
I suspect I might be on the spectrum. I have avoidant personality disorder. There's a lot of overlap there, but I do have a lot of Gemini stuff. So maybe I don't know. I don't.
Yeah,
think
but your
that
North Node is also in Gemini, which means it's a blind spot. It's an aspiration. So it's not necessarily the same. You know, even if your moon is there, wherever your North Node is, it forms something of a blind spot for you.
Another interesting thing too, like I'm an INTJ and I have nothing over in this corner, and he has everything crammed in there.
Yeah, corner in terms of houses, but you do have some things in the same signs since your signs are rotated differently.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah,
But
you've got a South Node in Sagittarius. You got a bunch of stuff in Sagittarius and Scorpio, right? Isn't that right?
yeah, I got some stuff in Sagittarius and definitely a lot of stuff in Scorpio. But I'm mostly talking about the houses because the houses are in the same area.
Yeah. Yours is mostly lower left side, is that right? And then also the top.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff over here in 8th house in Gemini, and a lot of stuff here, and a lot of stuff here, and
Yeah.
some stuff down here.
So you have a little bit less on the personally interactive part of it. So like if you take this corner down here, it's kind of like how you express yourself outwards towards others in interaction, you could say.
So it's kind of like extroverted, right?
Kind of.
Between the Nadar and the Descendant.
Because you're going from the internalized portion of yourself to the relational portion of yourself by going that way, you know?
Definitely what seems to kind of tie in the typology and MBTI are the nodes, though. Do you think the North Node and the Capricorn down there in the fifth, does that seem pretty INTJ-ish? I mean, Capricorn definitely seems INTJ or ENTJ-ish in a lot of ways.
I would say that his North Node seems very ENTJ, and I'll even give you one better. Not only do both of us have an Aries moon that's off by itself with a stellium in these 3 signs, but we both have North Nodes that are in an Earth sign and a fire house. I just have mine in Taurus, and mine happens to be in the 5th house, or not the 5th house, the 1st house, sorry. And the 1st house is also a fiery house, just like the 5th house is. And so a Capricorn 5th house and a Taurus 1st house are both going to be very much like, what's the reality in front of us? How do we structure things outside of us? And how do we punch it in the face to do what we want, right? But then since it's in a fiery house, it becomes aggressive, it becomes personal, it becomes action oriented. So there you have it. Also, the 5th and 1st house for both of us with our North Nodes is extroverted in terms of us trying to structure things. And what does that sound like?
NTJ, both of them.
Yes, and more specifically, like extroverted thinking as a function.
What do you feel more as? I mean, you told me you're INTJ during the interview. I really didn't type you. I just kind of just go what people say and just interview them because I'm not really just trying to like challenge them in a lot of ways. So some people I do. What do you feel like resonates more, Flamo?
I've been on the border, but I'm not. ENTJ so business, workaholic stuff, and I try not to do that because it's just if you're not starting the right spot in society, it's just not worth the effort.
So because you think ENTJs are more business oriented, you don't identify with it?
Yeah, pretty much. And they have a tribe and stuff. I really don't. And
yeah, and to some extent, I don't either. I think that that's actually a really bad stereotype to pattern things off of. We want to look more at other things that have to do with what underlies that stereotype. So, like, why are ENTJs driven for business?
And INTJs often are too, a lot of times.
Yeah, they are. They are. It's in a different way, right?
Yeah.
It's probably better to think of ENTJs as being externally goal oriented. Is that probably better, Jeff?
I think that's fair, yeah.
Yeah, instead of just business oriented, because it's like, yeah, you might attain your goals through business, but you might not. I've done a lot of traveling and stuff instead of business, and I've done a lot of like other stuff on the side. Not having my own business. I'm not a CEO of anything. So you could be an ENTJ and never want to go anywhere near businesses, especially if you don't agree with them philosophically or morally. So
And he wants to start a sex cult. So
no, well, I'm a
Okay.
neoliberal. I did start a couple corporations, but they both one's a mothballs and one failed. I didn't do that many, but I mean, I had 10K revenue with one of them before COVID knocked it out.
that was pretty good. I mean, because it sounds like just hearing you speak, like you're more on the extroverted side, but who knows, right?
It sounded like he was more extroverted when we were not recording, but since we're talking on the video, and that could be an aspect, you have to prompt him more to talk. You have to ask him. He's not like butting in as much and kind of just going off on tangents like extroverts tend to do.
And how old are you, Flame? If you don't mind me
31.
asking.
31.
See, so I'm like 7 years older than he is. I'm more likely to want to put myself forward. I've also had some extreme circumstances where I had to be able to speak in front of people. ENTJs can be the most introverted looking extrovert, and they sometimes want to hold their cards close to their chest because they're so socially aware and intelligent that they also realize what the consequences are for screwing up social interactions. They don't want to talk.
That's something I was going to say too. ENTJs can be fairly introverted.
Yeah. So.
Okay, but how would an INTJ act in the same situation?
What do you mean? Like what situation?
How would their behavior be any different?
Like on video?
Yes.
Well, I think we all like to kind of control the situation in social situations. So
yeah,
I'm the one that's running the show, I guess, in a way. This is my like the Zoom meeting and stuff. So I'm definitely more comfortable because I guess I can just end it if I wanted to. I guess I have that in the back of my head. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, it does.
Because
And
I think
like,
that INTJs are also socially uncomfortable, but in a very different way. They don't mind taking control of all the systems around the interactions as much as the ENTJs might, you know?
and we're very goal driven too, but it's more like internally. Like he wants to
Yeah.
start a sex cult. That's pretty extroverted thing, and that could be a business revenue too. A lot of people like, give me all your money.
Yeah. No,
Like,
I got the feeling that Flame was an ENTJ, but we're trying to determine it through various mechanisms, so I'm not going to proclaim that too strongly.
And I think autism is definitely that kind of convolutes things too, because
Right.
typically that's usually an introverted thing, and INTJs, almost all INTJs are labeled as autistic. So
Yeah, even if they aren't.
yeah.
So
So I'm looking at some similarities. I got the moon in the eighth house with him, and I got Pluto and Scorpio, but his is pretty much close, almost a conjunction with the Nadir. That's how you pronounce it, right? And mine's almost is in a
nadir,
conjunction
yeah.
in with the ascendant there. Can you? How does that contrast?
Okay. Well, the ascendant and the Inmum Coeli or whatever it's called, that's why it says IC there. It's the fourth house, you know. Um, it's they're almost always going to be close to being in a square angle to each other, 90 degrees, you know.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that that's how the sky looks. So like you're basically talking about the eastern horizon over here with the ascendant, and then literally like directly below the ground and the earth down here. So they're always going to be at like that kind of an angle to each other. But if there's so, I mean, let's see. And the houses have different sizes and shapes depending on various factors. So in this case, you can see that his is actually a little bit off center. It's not directly at the bottom like it would be if it were right here. Um, so that affects the angle of things. It looks like Pluto itself, like you just pointed to, is actually pretty much in a 90-degree angle with the ascendant.
Mm.
And Pluto being in a 90-degree angle with the ascendant, um, basically your deeper psychological emotional drives, your real passions are going to be harder for you to immediately express. They're not going to come out in your behavior very much. You're going to try to consciously or unconsciously hide them. Is that somewhat correct, Flame?
they're hidden for myself. I'm not quite sure what my passions are.
Yeah, see, so like even you don't necessarily always see them, and since it's Pluto and Scorpio, it's even more hidden, you know, because Scorpio is Pluto's own sign, and it's the hiding planet and the hiding sign. You could say the it's a double secrecy kind of a thing, and being at the bottom like that also means he's going to stuff it down. And this is all very subtle, by the way, right? Like it's not necessarily conscious. So when we're talking about Scorpio and Pluto, we're talking about subconscious psychological processes that often occur without us necessarily consciously knowing it. Psychological defense mechanisms to protect yourself function in such a fashion as to make it so you don't know they're happening, so that you can't stop them, because that's the whole point, right? Is to protect you. So
Okay, can we figure out what I'm hiding?
maybe
That's
because that Pluto is in the fourth house. So there might be some issues around family. There might be some issues around your heritage or your sense of homeland. There might be issues around becoming a parent or being a child to your own parents, or being a sibling. There might be issues around sharing and sharing alike when it comes to resources around other people. Doesn't any of that strike any kind of chord at all?
yeah. So I am black, so that's probably has a lot to do with it.
Uh-huh. Does it? Why does it have a lot to do with it?
So black people don't blend in as well and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Plus they plus pretty much when you interact, just everyone has like four different stereotypes, and I don't fit in any of those. So, well, getting more jock like as I keep working, since I'm one of the best in shape people at my plant. So I'm getting more jock like as I keep working.
Mm-hmm. And so almost focusing more on work and career to sort of get away from all that stuff. Almost like you're trying to get away from your sense of community and background by being in a workplace. Is that even remotely true?
I'm not sure community background. I don't have really much of community background. I used to have when I was in tech. I thought it had a community, but it evaporated in 2017 because dumb politics. So I don't really say I have a community. So
How do you feel about starting your own family?
I would love to, but there's no one who would want to do it with me at the moment that I know of.
How does it feel? Does it feel like there's a big like void or vacuum there, like makes it hard to start a family?
But avoiding my budget, maybe. But
Yeah, yeah, resources, money, maybe.
yeah. So
Yeah.
avoid my budget probably.
And if you, I mean, when you were younger and you were around your family members a lot, did you have any kind of emotional issues with them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And, do you want to talk about it? We can just move on, but
Yeah. Uh, um, so autistic meltdowns when I was a child, stupid being with the switch and stuff because my parents didn't know how to talk properly.
Mhm.
And the school thought I was stupid and a loser and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Um, turns out they're just bad at teaching in the little prison camp. So
Uh-huh. I know the feeling precisely. I know exactly what you're talking about. Um, so you had emotional meltdowns, your family didn't understand what was going on. And you probably, I mean, would you say that it made you feel disconnected from your family to be that way?
absolutely.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So even I dropped Christianity when I was like I think preteen.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Scorpio and Pluto can have to do with spiritual issues, by the way, because they're tied to your emotions and psychology.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, drop
yeah,
Christian was preteen. Then I picked up neo paganism right before COVID started. So like January, I think January 2020, I think would be
yeah. I'm still heavy on Christianity myself. But you, so would you say that like your difficulty in expressing or even understanding your deeper passions might come partly from the fact that you feel like maybe some of it was repressed when you were younger in your family environment?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think with, like when I'm 15, they burned my Magic the Gathering cards. I think
Oh,
my dad did.
seriously?
Yeah, he seriously did.
That sucks. Yeah, so it's interesting that this Pluto is square to that. I mean, because at the same time that it's square to the descendant, it's also squared. I mean, squared to the ascendant, it's squared to the descendant over here too. Goes both ways at the same time. It always does. So it might also have an impact on you being able to form relationships because the descendant in the seventh house is relationships. So, I mean, you might actually benefit a lot from digging more into your psychology and not necessarily normal therapy. I think that you and I both know that's not going to work very well. You probably need some kind of person who's more of a maverick to help you dig into your psychology than just a normal therapist, because they're not going to give you probably what you need. They're not going to be perceptive enough to understand more about you.
Yeah, I'm not part of the herd, so they wouldn't know what to do with me.
Yep. Yep.
It's called me therapy resistant. Maybe I'll get another DSM label.
Yep. And I wonder how much this Pluto having the different aspects that it does is also kind of influencing your desire to do this fifth house quote unquote hedonism thing. Because like when you say hedonism, what do you mean? What are you aiming for specifically with hedonism?
Sex.
Well, yeah, not just sex, but good food,
Uh-huh.
which is why I have a stew cooker and a slow cooker. I the first time I brought it out, the other plan used my pressure cooker to try to prepare some of the pork chops I have. So I have this. I have a slow cooker working on the stew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so like it sounds like almost more like a sort of like general enjoyment of yourself is what you mean by hedonism, which would be the fifth house. Um, so it's almost like your North Node here is trying to get you to realize who you are, not just through like understanding the rules, that's important, but also through enjoying yourself and really coming to understand what you are internally, which would help this Pluto a lot. And then, of course, once the Pluto gets more of an insight into what you are internally, the ascendant will have less trouble enacting it in your behavior and you'll be able to be more outgoing about it. You'll become more alive. You'll have more of a persona that's coming out of you. See?
I think it's interesting because I know that these points here, like the ascendant and the nadir, they have like their own flavor, right? Because the first house is about yourself, like your
Mm-hmm.
mask. how you present yourself, and the fourth house is like it's in the fourth house, so that's kind of like family, extroversion, community, and stuff like that.
Yep.
And my Pluto's over here, kind of clashing with myself, and his Pluto's over here, clashing with like the external aspect of it.
Well, and actually, I would say, like, if you're going to say community externally, we want the third house cusp right here, because this is the third house cusp. If you're going to say family and a sense of like internal home and protection, then the fourth house is not extroverted. It's more like what you hold inside emotionally. And so that goes into a sense of a protective home environment where you're shielded from the world, you're shielded from the elements, you're shielded from other people. There's people around who theoretically support you, right? Theoretically. So
That makes any sense.
that's right. That's right, we do.
So I have
What do you
nothing.
see in that theme, Jeff? What's your perception of it?
You got a lot of stuff in Capricorn, Sagittarius, and you have a lot more in Scorpio than he does. And
Haha.
it kind of bleeds over more into Pisces, which I can't see because all the shit's in my way. Yeah, you guys pretty much have a lot of stuff clustered in the same house with a lot of stelliums there, or not houses, but signs, but in different houses. Yours is more like mystical, the ninth house, eighth house stuff, and his, I guess, more practical oriented, fourth, fifth, sixth.
Yeah, you could say that. You could kind of say that, yeah.
Okay.
I have a lot in the seventh too, don't I?
Yeah.
Which is relational and talking and crap. So
what do we mean the difference between mystical and practical? Because I mean, I have 2 decks of tarot cards on my desk. I practice chaos magic. Is that really that practical?
That's not practical at all. I don't know. Just the eighth and ninth house are usually tied up.
Yeah, let's
Tied with the
remember though,
mystical
he's
stuff.
got stuff in the fourth house. He's got that moon that's focused in the eighth house. And the eighth house is, of course, the house of what? Mysticism. So
Yeah,
I have a strong eighth house. He's got a strong eighth house. I got a strong whatever. So
all right. Yep. And you got the both Aries moon. That's pretty. We were talking. I don't know if you heard us talk anything, but that sounds pretty FI inferior. We're talking about trying to find your inferior function. I don't know if you're more insecure about how you feel internally, which could be an autism thing too, with your feelings and your emotions, or like giving off a bad experience to people, looking foolish in front of crowds, things like that. What do you feel like a little more insecure about?
I feel a little more insecure about being forward for crowds and also my body. Supposedly people feel like they're invincible when they're young. I never got that. I always felt like I was about to die or something.
yeah, that's really funny. I didn't either. Everyone's always like, "Oh yeah, when you're young, you feel like you're really invincible and stuff." And I was like, "No, I don't." That's
I did a
stupid.
lot of stupid stuff when I was a teenager.
Yeah, well, you're an INTJ.
I was always like real suicidal and stuff too. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, if you're afraid of speaking in front of crowds, Flame, why? What is the reason that you feel that way?
Because people are stupid.
Because people are stupid, right? So like, you understand that they're going to misinterpret stuff and like they're going to take it out of context and all that stuff, right?
Correct.
Yep. And so you're afraid of speaking in front of crowds, maybe not because you don't have your ideas formed or because you can't speak, but rather because you're afraid of people's stupidity and them misunderstanding you.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So it's important to get the idea of what the motivation is behind the insecurity, Jeff? So what does that sound like?
I guess like since they said it out loud, the SC inferior can definitely sound autistic too. Like, so, well, do you kind of like daydream more, or are you more like practical in the sense of getting shit done, really?
So I kind of daydream all the time, but I need to get shit done before I can get back to not focusing on getting shit done, but I can have money and do my own stuff. So like, I guess I'm balanced. Unfortunately, I'm balanced.
So you're really focused on getting back to the things that you just want to directly do, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to experience, you want to accomplish, you just want to directly engage in, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like TE's hero to me. What do you think, Jeff?
I don't know. I'm leaning more towards INTJ. How are you at work? Like, do you work with like a bunch of people? Is there a big group of people? Or you
yeah, but I work at a warehouse, so there's a big group of people there, and I'm a trainer there, so I have to keep the people working, so I can get the work done soon enough I can get back home and cook stuff.
Oh, you're a trainer, huh? So
Yes.
even though you have autism, you're training people.
Yeah, it turns out people are less functional than expected.
Yeah.
That's
I've
for
had
sure.
jobs where I train people too in the
Mhm.
past. Now I just don't give a shit and I just try to do as little as possible. But
Do you like training people, Flame?
I'm good at it.
Uh-huh. But do you like it?
Mm,
Just okay, aside from it
nah,
being stupid,
I don't. I but I guess no, because I could have more people trained, like been up to a manager position, but I don't. I didn't. I had to deal with all the drama and stuff. Then I didn't get the corporation want to comb through you to finding more issues. So I would say no. I don't really like training people, but that's not a good thing to say. So
you're quite the mystery, aren't you?
what is why do you train people? You just want to like, because I like training people in a sense I didn't really like interacting with them. I like because it's like, well, people don't do shit right, and I want to teach them how to do shit right.
yeah, so I get the techniques down. So I want them to have my techniques, so we waste less time. So we waste less time, we waste less money, we get less companions, so we can leave sooner.
Here's a question, Jeff. Do you want to teach them to do things correctly because you want more efficiency or because you want them to intellectually understand things better?
More efficiently, I guess, because like I usually kind of stay in the shadows, and I used to. Now I just try to, because I rarely figured out the if you do a good job at work, they just reward you with more work.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
exactly.
so I just before, like when I grew marijuana, uh I was like really good at it, and people are like, how are you so efficient at this? How do you do things so fast? And I'm like, well, I can't really explain it to you. I can just show it to you. I don't know.
What did you give the music? Did you give the plants music?
Oh God, they blasted ghetto rap all the time there. It just drove me nuts. I couldn't stand that place. It just pissed me off beyond belief because I just very sensitive to sounds and stuff, and just being trapped in that stuff for 8 hours.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, even like I love metal, like loud music, but I can't stand loud, the reverberations from the giant boombox speaker and stuff.
I can't either.
Yeah. It seems like the older I get, the worse it gets.
I can.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I mean, what else do you want to look at, Jeff? What do you want to touch on? Because I don't know if we're any closer to really determining much about him.
I don't know. What do you guys think out in YouTube world out there? You can leave it down below in the comments. Um, like, do you like to kind of Flamo, do you like to kind of get everything, like all your cards in your hand, then take action, or do you just kind of do it by trial and error? Like you start and you figure it out as you go.
I prefer having the cards, but you don't get what you want most of the time. So I get what I get, then wing it from there.
Does sound pretty
Yeah.
ENTJ. I don't know, Jeff.
What's that?
Sounds pretty ENTJ right there.
But they like their control though. They like to kind of like get everything together, then act.
I don't know about that. ENTJs will just deal with whatever's in front of them. Of course, we
Really?
like control, but like with TE in the lead, you have to just kind of act on what's in front of you, right? Like you just have to go. You have to take action and get running with it.
Yeah, you
That
don't
go-
have to. You don't have to. It's just that you run out of other options.
Well, there you go.
Has anybody ever typed you? Because well, I guess to chime back on what we're talking about, like, because I think it's the INTJ's biggest pitfall, and that's one of the biggest stereotypes of this, that we're these master planners, but in reality, we're perceivers because NI is a perceiving function. So
Uh-huh.
we kind of like to get all the bases, but we get stuck in analysis paralysis. We don't act, we don't do anything. Do you ever get in that situation, Flamo, or do you just kind of like, okay, I need to start somewhere? I notice
Um,
it,
I
like,
get analysis paralysis and throws, but
yeah.
when if I had when I try to get myself out, I just have to start wherever. So
Huh.
Because I notice that's one thing that we kind of butted heads on. Not really butted heads, but we're kind of like, because like you're like wanting to get everything all together and start, like, well, I say, well, we just need to start somewhere, and you're kind of like, well, I'm not ready, I'm not prepared, I don't know, Zeon. about like kind of these projects that we've been doing and we've done in the past.
Oh, you feel like we're butting heads on that?
Not butting heads, just like we just have a different approach, and you're kind of like, what? I don't know. Because I just like, okay, I'm just gonna throw it out there because
Yeah, then again, you're the one who's doing the project primarily. It's your thing that I'm trying to participate in, so it's a very different dynamic than if I was in the lead.
yeah, because no
If I
one's
was in the
YouTube
lead, I'd
journey
be
is the
like, "Get over
same.
here."
Yeah, because no one's
Oh, really?
YouTube journey is the same. It's everyone's a little bit different.
I guess you have to take into consideration that maybe the second function tends to be more how you support someone else's efforts. If you think that's accurate,
Yeah, maybe
yeah,
it's a different flavor for sure.
if you're trying to support my stuff, you're going to be like, let's just go, knock some skulls together. And if I'm trying to support you, I'm going to be like, let's look at all the ideas.
But does NI look at ideas? Pretty much NI takes ideas and throws as many of them in the trash as possible.
In the trash, I guess. I mean,
That
Yeah,
sounds pretty INTJ because we're always like the pessimistic ones trying to figure out what doesn't work, and kind of we're like when people are like have ideas like, well, that's not going to work, and kind of like, I don't know. Do you get that a lot at work?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Very
well,
well.
that's not going to work. This is going to work, and this is why. Like, well, how do you know? Just because I played the scenario out in my head 1,000 times.
Well, yeah, you played a scenario and found out we just did it before and it didn't work, and you did it a couple more times and it didn't work. Yeah, I could, and sometimes I can cite the day, but usually don't have to cite the day anymore.
I don't know. After talking to us, what conclusion have you came to?
I didn't change my opinion. I think I was pretty ambivert, but I named INTJ slightly.
I'm still leaning to an INTJ too. I don't know. What makes you think ENTJ, Zeon? I mean, the definitely chart kind of, there's a lot there going on.
yeah, the chart, but of course, the chart has this big, complicated bunch of stuff that all combines into a single person, so it's hard to tell from individual elements, right? It's like, but the thing that made me think that he might be more extroverted was just the fact that if he is an ENTJ, it's easy to look introverted. I feel like his expression, the way that he expresses himself, has more of an extroverted vibe to it. So when I talk to INTJs, there's always a very strong and I think pretty like clear and present vibe of this is going through their heads first. They
Yeah.
don't just blurt things out. They don't just like fly off the cuff and start talking about things.
He kind of does do that.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's just the vibe I got. Could be wrong, but my vibe is pretty good at figuring out the personality types.
Probably you're both right because I'm pretty when I at least when I did a few different tests, I was pretty on the border and study INTJ, so it's possible that you're both right.
And the thing is, like the tests are hard because it's like there's all these factors that go into how you answer the questions that may not have to do with your personality, and the test can't account for everything. Like so, like if you are from like if you're black and you're autistic, you've had a very different experience than a lot of other people have, right? And it's like you go to answer these questions, and of course you're going to look more introverted than you might actually be. So it's really hard to say.
And a lot of people answer the questions like how the type they want to be too. That's another problem.
Yeah, even if you don't want to be the type, if you think you're a type, you'll subconsciously maybe drift in that direction.
And I'm not a
So
big fan of the Big Five, but what did your scores look like on that? Do you ever take it?
Yeah, yeah, I took it, but it doesn't make much sense. Unfortunately, the big five doesn't make any sense when you try to communicate. So
And I definitely score very, very low on extroversion, like 14 out of 100.
wow, it's pretty
But
bad, Jeff. Jeez.
yeah, I'm introverts are the devil in society. We're horrible. But that's the avoidant personality disorder talking too. So, or not talking, I should say, I guess. Well, we are in a conundrum here. So if you can sort it out and give us your opinions out there in YouTube, I would appreciate it. You can leave a comment below. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Oflameo, about your chart? Any questions you have?
I guess we can just keep. I guess we can always stress test me, and then we can get it one way or the other way. Pretty much. I don't know what I should do. Just we can figure out what I really am.
Yeah, you might just be a little bit more of a unique chimera or amalgam.
Yeah.
It might
Especially
even
here.
be that the MBTI typology isn't that useful in your case because you're too different from everybody else. You're too much of an outlier.
Yeah, which makes me end up balanced.
Yeah, let's say that.
Yeah.
Because your sun it's kind of in a cusp, I guess, going into, oh, never mind, it's not going into cusp of Sagittarius. I'm looking at it wrong. But you have kind of an introvert sun sign, really, huh?
Me?
Yeah, Scorpio's pretty introverted, I would say.
Yeah, Scorpio is, but the seventh house isn't.
Yeah.
Scorpio seventh house, Sun with Saturn. You see those two things there? That's when Saturn's combining with the Sun like that. It's pretty brutalizing to the ego and the personality, and so you become a very careful person. You become extremely careful in your interactions since it's in the seventh house. Become very careful in interactions with people, and in how you're psychologically perceiving them, and you kind of tiptoe around people a little bit more. So even though I have the TJ designation, you can see that the Sun and Saturn Scorpio combination in the seventh house might actually make me look introverted initially with people. And also, of course, my North Node is in the first house, which means that I have to gradually become more expressive, more of an individual, all that stuff.
How does your North Node compare to his? They're both in Earth signs. I
Mm-hmm.
know that much.
They're both in Earth signs. They're both in fire houses. Mine's in the first. His is in the fifth. The first house is like the Aries house. The fifth house is like the Leo house. And then of course the ninth house is like the Sagittarius house. So there's the fire triangle.
That's pretty conflictive, right? Like fire and earth
No, not
forces the earth.
necessarily. I wouldn't say that any of the elements are necessarily conflicting with each other, although they may. I mean, yeah, certain sign and house combinations for your notes can make things interesting, shall we say?
Yeah.
If you have an earth sign and a fire house for your north node, then it's a challenge of trying to not only get a firmer grip on reality, but also a firmer grip on what action means within the context of reality. You know what I mean? How do you act from instinct? What is action? How should you take action? When should you take action? How do you structure your efforts to make them effective, efficient, impactful to get you what you want, all that stuff. So fire and earth could potentially clash. I don't tend to think of it that way in terms of like rotating the houses. I mean, if you want to, you can kind of look at it and be like, okay, so yeah, this person has all these like fire houses and earth signs in their chart. That means that they are just generally a very conflicted person. Some charts actually do have a lot of conflict that's internal to the person. It's just part of how they operate.
I noticed I can't flip back as easy as I thought I could to back to his chart,
That's
unfortunately.
because you got the annotation going.
Okay, let me turn that off real quick here. And there we go.
There you go.
And there we go. I forgot where I was going with this now. Shit.
You're talking about the North Node being an earth and fire.
Yeah. Oh, he don't have as many aspects. Like I don't like this chart as much because it isn't pointing directly to the aspects like the astro chart one does.
Mm-hmm.
But he don't have as many aspects going on as we do, right?
Yeah. Let's
He's,
see.
he didn't talk a
Yeah,
lot about the aspects, really.
he doesn't really have any oppositions. Doesn't look like. Yeah. He does have some squares here with this Saturn and then like Mercury and Mars down here.
Mm-hmm.
Not Saturn. Did I say Saturn? Jupiter.
Yeah, I did say Saturn.
Yeah, it's Jupiter. Jupiter's in Virgo over here. Mercury and Mars are in Sagittarius along with the Sun here. And so Jupiter and then this Mercury Mars complex right here, that's a square, this red line, which means that they are clashing to some large extent. But clashing can be a good thing, depending on what you do in response to it. None of these
Yes,
things are
well,
inherently good or bad. They just are what they are, and then you have to figure out what to do.
how are they clashing? Exactly.
Well, so whenever something is clashing, you're going to see it's usually going to be in houses that conflict with each other, and it's definitely going to be in signs that conflict with each other, right? So Mercury and Sagittarius are both mutable signs, and both being mutable signs, they tend to try to do the same things, but in really different ways. So they will often conflict about what they think the right way to do something is. They'll think they both know more than the other one, and they're both kind of right and they're both kind of wrong because they use totally different forms of intelligence. They approach things in a totally different way, but then they're often working on the same kinds of aims and projects in life in a general sense. Virgo is always trying to get work done. It's always trying to use logic to understand how everything actually functions and stuff like that. Sagittarius wants to understand the bigger truths of life, the philosophical ideas behind how the universe works and like how to live as a result. And so, you know, the clash tends to be in whether or not you want to believe more in larger philosophical concepts or more direct logical processes that you can more easily work with and see and observe. So
Where's this Mars at? I'm trying to find it. Maybe it's covered up in black.
it's covered up by that ugly circle I drew.
All right. Well, I got to get going pretty quick. I get my son from school here in a little bit. Any last minute questions you have?
No, I don't remember any. I guess I don't have any last minute questions. I guess this is to be determined on.
Yeah. Maybe we could talk more one-on-one because, like, before we started recording, you were more talkative than we hit the record button. I don't know. Was there any anxiety that came with that, or?
I'm just not. I'm just trying to listen to you and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Usually extroverts are more like going to butt in and ask questions and ask for clarification, really.
Unless they're autistic.
No, I do butt in a lot, especially when someone's being stupid or does not make any sense. But I just said, you're the experts in this. I just said, just tell me what's going on. And now we don't know yet. Well, we do know, but we can't determine MBTI type because I'm following close to the border.
It's just hard because the ENTJ and INTJ, they're so similar as it is, too. And you got a lot of stuff, extra stuff in there spicing up the pot, I guess.
All right. Well, any other final observations, Jeff?
Not really. I mean, it's just interesting how you guys are grouped together and how mine is more spaced out, I guess. And I have nothing in this section over here.
I mean, technically, I really don't either.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to analyze more charts and kind of see where it goes. And maybe we could chat a Flamo or maybe do another interview podcast one-on-one and kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, maybe we should just do more stuff. Maybe if we have enough stuff to look at, we could tell. Or maybe I'm just a fence sitter.
All right. I'm still leaning more towards INTJ, but I guess Zeon thinks ENTJ, and you think you're the more INTJ as well, but maybe you're ambiverted.
Well, we know I'm ambivert. We just don't know which side of the fence I'm on exactly. Well, I would say we do, but Zeon disagrees. So
maybe you're an ENTJ. There we go. Ambivert.
All right. Well, I guess that's it.
All right. Go ahead and give us a like, share, subscribe. We also have Zeon, or not Zeon, but Oflameo's interview that I did with him probably like a year and a half ago. I'll post that down here. Thank you all for joining us here and have a good day.